The courthouse clock read 9:14 a.m. when Liana Voss noticed her own reflection in the polished doors. Her face looked like a question she had been postponing for 11 years. Beside her, Dominic Mercer flattened the knot of his tie with 2 long fingers and glanced at the entrance he had walked through 700 times before, never as her escort. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready is a generous word. You dressed like someone who expected to win. Lipstick is not a verdict." He almost smiled. Almost. They were lawyers by training, but this morning they were a strategy that had begun last winter in a kitchen in Hartford, when Liana had opened the pantry and found a perfume she had never smelled before. Not hers. Too sweet. Too deliberate. A fingerprint in glass, the way some people leave a fingerprint on a marriage by forgetting they are not invisible. 11 years earlier, Liana had married Grant Holstead in a small chapel off the Connecticut River. The guest list was generous, the vows honest, the reception floral enough to make the housekeepers weep. He was 26, a junior partner at the venture firm his father had built. She was 23, 2 semesters into her master's in hospital administration and quietly fluent in the language of triage. They had agreed on a marriage of competence. She would manage crises. He would raise capital. They would build something intelligent and warm, and they would not repeat the romanticism that had burned their parents. They kept their word. Within 3 years, Liana ran operations at a regional medical center. She read contracts the way other people read novels. She understood which asymmetry could sink a budget and which kindness could save a department. Grant called her the calm in the room. She called him the math. Theo was born in autumn. 8 pounds 2 ounces of blue-eyed consequence. Mia arrived 3 years later, smaller, sharper, with her father's stubbornness and her mother's memory. They lived in a colonial house off Asylum Hill with a backyard large enough to host soccer practice and a kitchen large enough to host disappointment. The disappointment arrived on a Wednesday in February. Liana had worked a 14-hour shift negotiating the discharge of a pediatric patient whose family had been forgotten by insurance for weeks. She came home at 11. The lights in the kitchen were on. The kids' art folder was open on the island, the one she always kept on the highest shelf. The ceramic bowl she had bought in Lisbon sat beside the sink, filled with water, a single orchid floating like a question. Grant sat at the table with a glass of red wine and a woman Liana had met only once. Sienna Quartermain. 27. A publicist for a Manhattan gallery. Auburn hair, a face built for sponsored posts, and a laugh that entered the room like a draft. Sienna wore Mia's bathrobe. The robe was too short on her. She had not noticed. "Liana," Grant said. "You're home." He stood. He kissed her cheek. He smelled like Sienna's perfume. "Where are the kids?" Liana asked. "Sleeping." "At your mother's," Sienna said, almost brightly. She offered to take them for the weekend. Grant said yes. "I stayed." The sentence landed like a dropped coin in a quiet house. Liana placed the car keys on the counter. She did not ask follow-up questions. Follow-up questions were the courtesy of a woman who still believed in the conversation. She was past the conversation. She was at the inventory stage. She was deciding what to keep. "Liana," Grant said sharply, "this is not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." "We were watching a film." "The kids are fine. My mother is a responsible adult." "The children are at your mother's." "Sienna is in my daughter's robe." "There is a perfume in this kitchen that did not arrive by accident." "Tell me what part of this I am misreading." Sienna's smile thinned at the edges. She had the face of someone accustomed to being the youngest person in the photograph and, therefore, the most forgiven. That evening, she would learn how unforgiving a house can be when the woman who built it finally decides to read the receipts. Grant opened his mouth. Liana raised her hand, palm toward him. The gesture was economical, trained in the rooms where surgeons and hospital boards performed together. It meant, in one clear motion, do not begin what you cannot finish. I'm going upstairs, she said. I'm going to pack. I'm not going to scream. You should be grateful for that. Sienna was lonely, he said. That is not my department. Liana, please. Good night, Grant. Upstairs, the bedroom smelled of a candle Grant had never bought. The sheets were the ones she had put on the bed that morning. A pair of heels she had not seen sat by the dresser, half a size too big, the leather too soft. The framed photograph from their third anniversary had been replaced with a Polaroid of Theo and Mia on a beach, smudged at the edges as if someone had held it too tightly. She did not unpack. She did not weep. She called Dominic Mercer from the guest bathroom, sitting on the edge of the tub with the door locked. He answered on the second ring, voice grave, the voice of a man who had represented her family in two quieter wars and had never lost either. I need a divorce, she said. He did not ask why. He asked when. Tomorrow. And the children? I want them. What makes you think he will not keep them? He has never once changed a diaper while reading a contract. He has never cancelled a meeting to read them a bedtime story. He has never missed a closing because Theo had a fever. But he is very good at saying he loves them in sentences. Dominic was quiet for 3 seconds. Pack for 3 days, he said. Not for anger. Pack for the long version. Bring the calendar book from the kitchen drawer. Bring the photo from the anniversary. Bring the kids. Where will we go? My sister's house in Old Lyme. She owes me a favor. Thank you, Dominic. Liana. Yes? Do you want revenge, or do you want freedom? I want both. That is expensive. I can afford it. In what currency? In currency he thinks belongs to him. Dominic almost smiled again. This time he let it. In the guest bathroom mirror, Liana studied her own face for the first time in 11 years without looking for anyone's approval. She looked tired. She looked serious. She looked, in the unflattering light of a fluorescent bulb, like a woman who had spent a decade being told she was steady and had just realized that steady was not always a compliment. Steady was what people called a woman when they wanted her not to move. She had moved. By morning, Grant would discover 3 things. She had taken the children. She had taken the calendar book that recorded every meeting he had missed, every school event he had skipped, every night he had arrived after Theo was asleep and before Mia had stopped waiting. And she had left behind a single sentence, typed on the back of an old rehearsal card, beside the coffee machine he only knew how to use. You may love them in sentences. I will love them in attendance. This was the first morning of the rest of their marriage. It looked nothing like the last night. In Old Lyme, dawn arrived the way it does on the coast of Connecticut in March, sideways, salt in the air, the kind of pale light that makes a person stop decorating themselves and start remembering what they look like without permission. Liana stood at the kitchen window of Dominic's sister's house and watched her children eat cereal without negotiating. Theo was reading the back of the box. Mia was drawing a horse inside a circle marked Mom's office. The circle was not a joke. Mia was 6. Dominic was on the porch with his phone. His sister, Marin, had left a tray of coffee and a small vase of forced daffodils. He did not touch either. He was reviewing the motion he had already drafted in his head. The temporary custody filing goes in at 10 a.m., he said when Liana stepped outside. He will counter within the hour. He always does. He had the emergency hearing in family court before he filed, didn't he? He filed at 6:42 this morning from his car. He used the children's school calendar as evidence of your schedule, then he used your schedule as evidence of unfitness. That is a man who believes contradiction is a personality. Liana breathed the salt. What did he tell the judge about Sienna? Nothing. What did he tell the judge about the children? Exactly what he tells his partners in the elevator. That he loves them. That he is present. That his schedule is responsive. And the schedule says what? Dominic handed her the printout. The calendar book lay in 11 columns. Pink for Grant. Blue for Liana. Yellow for the children. Across 8 months, Pink had 91 open dates between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Blue had 4. Yellow had 0 because yellow was a code Liana had meant to update and never had, because adding her own attendance to the book felt, even to her, like the kind of self-importance she was trained to resist. He will tell the judge that Pink is partnership, Dominic said. That Pink is dinners. That Pink is the foundation. Pink is dinners with clients who happen to be Sienna's friends. The dinners are not for the children. The dinners are not even for him. The dinners are an alibi he builds in 3 courses. Dominic nodded. Then we do not correct him. We let him say it. We let him say it twice. We let one of his own partners confirm it. The door opened. Rosalind Carrington walked in without knocking. Rosalind had been Liana's roommate at the master's program, the witness at their wedding, the godmother to Theo, and the only woman in Liana's life who had ever once told her that steady was not a compliment. Rosalind had flown in from Chicago with 2 suitcases, one of them filled with documents. Put those on the dining table, Liana said. The dinner receipts? All of them. The dates. The restaurants. The notes column. The reservation names. Rosalind set the folder down. Sienna's name appears on 7 reservations from the date the engagement ring was at the jeweler. Show me. Rosalind opened the folder to a tag in the shape of a small red flag. The reservations listed parties of 2. The phone number on file was Sienna's. The credit card on file was a corporate card at the venture firm, but the subsidiary code was Grant's personal account, billed as client development. Client development, in their household vocabulary, had always meant the kind of evening where men tell each other jokes they would not bring home to their wives. It had never meant dinner with a 27-year-old publicist who wore reposts like jewelry. He classified our marriage as client development, Liana said. He did not classify, he depreciated, Rosalind said. You are line item 14 on his expense ledger. Cancelled for cause. Liana almost laughed. Almost was enough. The children came to the doorway. Theo in his school shirt. Mia in her socks. Theo watched the adults with the weary focus of a 9-year-old who has begun to suspect that grown-up conversations are not arguments but inventories. Mom, he said, are we going home? We are going to a different home for a little while, baby. Then we are going to court. What is court? A room where grown-ups explain themselves. Do you have to explain yourself? Not the way he does. Are you scared? Liana knelt. She took his face in both hands. His face was warm and confused and, behind that, still happily a child's. She looked at him and did not use the calm voice she used with hospital boards. She used the voice she used when he pressed his thumb into a bruise and she had to convince him the bruise was already leaving. I am not scared, she said. I am tired in a way that wants to be loud, and I am choosing not to be loud because you and your sister deserve a quiet mom. Quiet, but present. Is that the same as calm? No. Calm is a costume. Quiet is a choice. Theo nodded slowly. He had the face of a boy who wanted to believe her and was trying to decide whether belief was something you earn or something you remember. Then he went back to his cereal. Mia walked up to Liana, pressed a crayon drawing of the horse into her hand, and said, "This horse has nothing wrong with her." Liana looked at the drawing. The horse was brown. The circle around it, marked Mom's office, was green. The horse's tail was on fire. She did not ask why the tail was on fire. Children draw what they overhear. She taped the drawing to the refrigerator beside Marin's daffodils. Then she took out her laptop. For 2 years, Grant had asked her to review his lender memos before they went out. She had rewritten 118 of them. She had corrected 9 risk misstatements. She had, on 6 occasions, written entire paragraphs that protected an investor from a number Grant had chosen to soften because the softened number made his portfolio look more liquid than it was. She had signed none of those memos. She was not even named in the metadata. But she had her drafts folder. She had her drafts folder because Liana Voss had never deleted an edit in her life. Edits were the conscience of a document. She sent one email to Dominic. The subject line was 8 numbers long, a code they had agreed on years ago when they were still in grad school and still pretending law was a small world. The code meant paper trail attached. Attached was a folder of 142 pages. Each was dated. Each was a draft Liana had submitted. Each was a final version Grant had submitted that had quietly removed her safeguard. "I did not steal these," she said to Dominic on the porch. "He gave them to me. Every time he asked me to make the language sound nicer, he gave me his real conscience and accepted my cleaner conscience in its place." "That is not a metaphor," Dominic said. "That is the heart of a fraud case." "I know. You are going to expose your husband in open court." "He left his conscience with me. I am returning it." Dominic looked at the folder. He looked at the children. He looked at the house, which smelled of coffee and daffodils and the kind of courage that does not announce itself in speeches but in the small, persistent act of showing up with a paper trail and a crayon drawing beside the refrigerator. "I will draw the motion tonight," he said. "It will be 41 pages. Make it 43. Add the calendar. Add the receipts. Add the dates the children were ill and Sienna did not call." He nodded. "And the dates the children were ill and he did not call?" "Those are in there already. They are in the calendar book. They are in pink." Grant's lawyers responded faster than expected. By 11 a.m. on the second day, 2 men in matching charcoal suits were sitting across from Dominic in a conference room in Hartford, smiling like men who had been retained at $600 per hour and intended to perform it. Their names were Calloway and Pratt. Their opening line was nearly identical. "Our client is a devoted father and a respected partner in this community." Dominic did not smile. He opened a folder. "Your client retained me by accident 9 years ago," Dominic said. He was about to sign a contract that would have transferred liability for a failed logistics acquisition to a holding company controlled by his father-in-law. "I noticed." He remembers. He does not like to remember. So he tells people I am merely a family attorney. I am not merely anything. Calloway cleared his throat. "Mrs. Holstead's hours at the hospital are, frankly, irregular. She is on call twice a month. She has been on call twice a month for 9 years. In that time, she attended 1,012 school events. School events are not compulsory. School events are the difference between a parent and a guest. Your client's school events number 31. I have the receipts." "That is selective," Pratt said. "Selection is the job of an attorney. Honesty is the job of a witness. Your client will be honest in 4 weeks. I am giving you the courtesy of knowing which kind of honesty." The men shifted. Calloway opened his mouth to argue the calendar. Dominic pulled out a single page from the folder. It was a spreadsheet printed on ivory paper. The top of the spreadsheet was marked, in soft pink highlighter, 14 dates. These were the dates on which Theo had been ill. Below each date, in pale blue ink, was the name of the person who had brought him soup. The name appeared 14 times. Liana Voss. The name did not appear pink. Pink was the color of fathers. The spreadsheet recorded that fathers do not bring soup. Fathers send assistants to bring soup, and they tell the assistants to leave the soup on the counter and not to bother anyone, and the assistants bring the soup and apologize to the mother for the father's absence. Your client's calendar, Dominic said, is a beautiful record of intentions. The spreadsheet is a beautiful record of the distance between intentions and conduct. Pratt asked for a recess. They took it in the hallway. Liana, who had been waiting in Dominic's outer office, watched them through the frosted glass and recognized the gestures men make when they have been out-negotiated and are deciding how to bill for it. Pratt rubbed the back of his neck. Calloway exhaled like a man who had just been told there was an aquarium in his living room and his client had forgotten to mention it. When they returned, the tone was different. Not defeated. Adjusted. They asked about the older items on the calendar. School plays. Vaccination appointments. The one morning, 2 winters ago, when Theo had a stomach virus and a scheduled investor breakfast. Your client cancelled breakfast twice in 11 years, Dominic said. Once for his father-in-law's funeral. Once for his daughter's recital. The recital was the calendar item, not the funeral. He attended the funeral because he was in the wedding party. He attended the recital because the recital was competition. He sat in row 3. He arrived 11 minutes before curtain. He told his wife he had rearranged 4 meetings. He had not. His assistant later confirmed. She cried when she confirmed it. She had watched him postpone nothing. Calloway looked up. That is hearsay. That is a witness with a calendar app and a therapy bill. The therapy bill is admissible as evidence of distress. The calendar is admissible as evidence of scale. The crying is admissible as evidence that someone present regrets working for your client. Pratt set his pen down. We will request a custody evaluation, he said. You will request a custody evaluation because you have read the briefs and you already know what is coming. The custody evaluation will be conducted by Dr. Helen Aoki. Do not bother contacting her references. I will give them to you. Aoki has done 400 evaluations. She has been challenged twice. Both times she was affirmed. Your client will sit in her office and explain himself for 9 hours over 3 sessions, and she will write a report that begins with the word residential and ends with the word primary. Residential is where the children sleep. Primary is who they trust at 2 a.m. when they wake up with a fever. Your client will claim residential. Aoki will give him primary if, and only if, the children say his name in a particular test that he cannot study for. I will let Aoki explain it. I am not the expert. I am the lawyer who calls the expert. Pratt tried again. Aoki is biased toward mothers. Aoki is biased toward truth. Mothers happen to be present more often. So do pediatric nurses. So do school teachers. So do any humans who work in buildings where children are also present. Aoki is biased toward buildings your client cannot seem to enter without making a phone call. There was a pause. Calloway reached for a glass of water. He set it down without drinking. What does Mrs. Holstead want? Pratt finally asked. She wants her children, her name back, and the house she paid for. She wants maintenance at the rate the court will calculate. She wants the investor memo she drafted to be sealed. She wants the children's passports surrendered to her attorney pending resolution. She wants her husband to answer one question under oath. Which question? She will present it in chambers. That is not how custody hearings work. That is how this one will. Naomi Vasquez is presiding. Judge Vasquez has been on this bench for 17 years. She has presided over 17 divorces, 4 of which involved venture partners. She has a method. You will be informed of the method when the method chooses to inform you. The men left at 12:48 p.m. Their car pulled away without waving. Dominic closed the folder. He looked at Liana. They will try to settle, he said. They will try to settle because Pratt is a coward, she said. He is a coward with a calculator. He will offer you a number that would make most women faint. He will use the word fairness. He will use the word generosity. What is the number? 70. 70 what? 70% of one. He will give you 70% of one house, and he will keep the rest, and he will call it reasonable. Tell him the number is the children. He will tell you the children are not a number. Tell him the children are the only number. Dominic nodded. He did not write anything down. He did not need to. He had been raised by a woman who taught him that the loudest number in a courtroom is not the dollar, and the loudest sound is not the gavel, and the loudest silence is the one a mother holds while a man explains why his calendar was empty in the month his daughter turned 6. They returned to Old Lyme that night. The children were asleep. The crayon horse was still on the refrigerator. Marin had made soup. Liana ate in silence. She did not weep. She turned the pages of the calendar book in her lap like a woman reading a novel whose ending had already been written by someone else, and now she only had the strength to make sure everyone in the courtroom saw the ending she had read. In the hallway, Theo appeared in his pajamas. He held a drawing. The drawing showed 2 houses, one larger, one smaller. Inside the larger house, 2 stick figures sat at a table. The table had no chairs. Inside the smaller house, 4 figures sat at a table. The chairs had cushions. "This is the house I want," he said. Liana took the drawing. She kissed his forehead. "We will go to court tomorrow," she said, "and we will tell them what the house looks like." "The judge?" "The judge will look at your drawing." "Won't she laugh?" "She will not laugh. She will see the cushions." Theo went back to bed. Liana taped the second drawing beside the first. The refrigerator was becoming an exhibit. Neither Liana nor Dominic would mention it in court unless they had to. Some evidence is for the wall only. Some evidence is for the heart that has to keep going. The first hearing was held at the Hartford Family Courthouse on a Tuesday that smelled of floor wax and recycled air. Courtroom 4B had been renovated in 2019. The benches were new, the carpet was gray, and the portraits of former judges along the back wall were the only thing the courthouse had not yet replaced with technology. There were 38 people in the gallery. 26 of them were there for other cases. 12 were there for Liana and Grant, mostly because a custody hearing between a hospital administrator and a venture partner was the kind of small news that small cities whisper about over coffee for 3 weeks. Judge Naomi Vasquez arrived at 10:07. She was 62, short, precise, and wore reading glasses on a chain that she never used for vanity. She had been a public defender in Hartford for 11 years before her appointment. She had defended 4 women in shelters. She had prosecuted one man who tried to buy his way out of a restraining order. She did not believe in fairy tales. She believed in calendars. "All rise." The room stood. The judge sat. The room sat. The clerk called the docket. The case was Holstead versus Holstead. The case was also, as Judge Vasquez noted without looking up, Holstead versus Voss, because Liana had filed a petition to reclaim her maiden name before the morning was over. "This is not a preliminary custody matter," the judge said. "Mr. Pratt, you have filed an emergency motion. Mr. Mercer, you have filed a counter-motion of equal urgency. I intend to treat this as a contested custody hearing with the evidentiary scope of a full trial. We will sit from 10 to 1 o'clock today. We will recess. We will sit again tomorrow if needed. Anyone who believes they can charm me into a 40-minute decision should leave now. Anyone who believes they can charm me at all should leave now." Nobody left. The judge looked at Grant first. Grant was dressed well. He had worn his blue suit, the one he wore to investor dinners, the one Liana had bought for him at Bergdorf 7 years earlier because the original suit had worn at the elbows and he had refused to replace it. His tie was the tie he wore to weddings where the bride was not his wife. His cufflinks were the cufflinks Sienna had given him in October. "Is the cufflink relevant?" Rosalind whispered from the gallery. "Every detail is relevant," Liana whispered back. "He just doesn't know how relevant." Grant's testimony began. He spoke about his devotion. He spoke about Theo's love of chess. He spoke about Mia's habit of falling asleep to his voice on the phone when she was away at camp. The judge took notes. She did not interrupt. When she did interrupt, it was surgical. "Mr. Holstead," she said, "you testified that you spoke to your daughter every night she was at camp. The camp was 4 weeks long. That is 28 nights. Your daughter's counselor, Ms. Reena Patel, who will be called later today, has a phone log. The log indicates 20 calls. 14 were under 1 minute. 6 were between 1 and 3 minutes. The remaining calls are recorded in the log as missed. Did you reach her 28 times, or 20 times? Grant blinked. I called more than 20 times. Do you have a phone log of your own? No, I do not. I deleted the log when I upgraded my phone. So you will rely on memory. I am relying on affection, Your Honor. Affection is not a noun I can subpoena. Memory is. Please answer the question. 20 times. Thank you. Calloway tried to redirect. The judge allowed it. Grant recovered. He spoke about Sienna not once. He spoke about his mother, Eloise Holstead, who would testify that Grant had been a present son and was now being a present father. He spoke about Liana's hours. He did not, in the first hour, speak about the investor memos. Dominic did not ask about the memos either. He asked about the calendar. Mr. Holstead, Dominic said, your calendar book shows that between September and April, you attended 11 of your son's 22 soccer practices. You attended 3 of his 9 school assemblies. You attended 7 of his 24 homework check-ins. The homework check-ins are a school program in which a parent sits with the child for 30 minutes. You attended 7. Mrs. Holstead attended 23. Is that consistent with your testimony that you are a co-primary parent? I work. Everyone works. The question is whether your work is the activity of a co-primary parent, or whether your work is the activity of a man whose wife attended 23 homework check-ins, and you attended 7, and the 7 were on evenings when the office closed early because of a snowstorm. Judge Vasquez looked up. Counselor, are you implying the father chose not to attend when inconvenient? I am stating a record, Your Honor. The record says he attended when the office was closed. He did not attend when the office was open. Grant's jaw tightened. He disliked sarcasm. He disliked questions. He disliked being a sentence that someone else had written. Judge Vasquez called the recess. The gallery stood. The room exhaled. Liana stood but did not leave the courtroom. She did not need to. The room had already grown smaller around her until only 2 things existed, the children and the answer. Across the aisle, Sienna Quartermain sat in the back row. Sienna was wearing a cream sweater, a gold necklace, and the same perfume Liana's kitchen had smelled like the night everything changed. She had come to observe. She had not been called as a witness. She had not been summoned. She had come because she wanted to be seen, the way some people go to galleries not to look at art but to be sure the room knows they were there. Liana met her eyes. Sienna looked away first. The looking away was its own exhibit, but Liana would not put it in evidence. Some exhibits are for the wall only. Dominic leaned close. Tomorrow, Aoki, he said. What will she ask? She will ask the children to draw their house. She will ask the children to name the person who reads to them at night. She will ask the children to describe the sound of a house where someone wakes up before they do. Theo will tell her about the sound of Liana's slippers on the hardwood. Mia will tell her about the sound of Liana humming when she showers, which Mia insists is loud enough to wake the sun. And Grant? Grant will tell Aoki that he works late. Aoki has heard that sentence 400 times. She will write in her report that late is not the same as present, and present is not the same as patient, and patient is not the same as loving. She will write one more sentence. She will write that Theo, when asked what he wishes he could give his mother, answered, more hours. She will write that Theo, when asked what he wishes he could give his father, answered, a smaller office. Liana looked at the back of the courtroom. Sienna had left. The bench was empty. The perfume lingered, half a second longer than it should have, the way perfume does when people leave without confessing that they were ever there. The judge returned at 1 p.m. Mr. Mercer, she said, I understand you intend to call a forensic financial witness tomorrow. I do, Your Honor. Is the witness ready? She has been ready for 2 years. She was raised by a woman who taught her to read contracts before she could read novels. Is the witness the wife? The witness is the wife. The witness is also the conscience of 142 documents. The witness is also, Your Honor, the reason the investor memos are about to enter evidence with a single difference. They will arrive as drafts and finals, side by side. The drafts will not be contested. The drafts belong to Mrs. Holstead. The finals will be marked as male-authored. The drafts will be marked as female-authored. The court will see the difference. The judge set her pen down. It was a small sound, but the room heard it. I have one question for now, she said. I will not ask it in chambers. I will ask it in open court tomorrow. I will ask it of Mr. Holstead. I will ask it only once. I will not ask it twice. If the question lands where I think it will, this hearing will end by 11 a.m. If the question does not land where I think it will, this hearing will go to Friday. Either way, the question is mine, and the courtroom will hear the answer. She stood. The room stood. Court is in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow. The gavel fell. The sound was small and clean, the sound of a woman who had decided what to do with her morning. The night before the second hearing, Liana did not sleep much. She sat in the kitchen of Marin's old limehouse and reviewed the folder Dominic had marked in green. The green tabs were the documents she had written. The red tabs were the documents Grant had sent out. The white tabs were the documents the firm's investors had received. She laid the three sets side by side on the dining table until the table looked like a medical exhibit, and then she walked away because she did not trust her own eyes at 2 a.m. She trusted her memory. Her memory had carried 9 years of silence. Her memory had also carried the small things. The time Theo had asked Grant to coach his soccer team and Grant had said he would coach after a 4 o'clock meeting that did not exist. The time Mia had drawn Grant a card and Grant had taken the card to work, where it stayed in his briefcase for 11 days until Liana found it folded in half beside a hard drive. The time Grant had promised to attend the school play and had texted Liana at 7:09 p.m. from a hotel in Boston saying he was sorry, he had been called away, the deal had closed, she should tell Mia he was watching from afar. There is no distance at which a man can watch a school play. She walked out to the porch. The salt air was cold. The neighbor's dog was barking at something that did not exist. She called Rosalind. Are you awake? She asked. I am awake in Chicago. It is 1 a.m. here. The exhibits are laid out. Are they making you crazy? Yes. They are not making you crazy. They are making you accurate. Accuracy is the most uncomfortable costume a woman can wear in a courtroom. Judges love it. Husbands hate it. I do not want him to hate me. You want him to recognize the cost of his choices. Hate is what recognition looks like on a man who has never been taught another word for it. Liana was quiet. Then she said, Do you think the children will be okay? The children will be the only ones in the courtroom who will be completely okay. Children are not okay because they trust the adults in front of them. The adults in front of them tomorrow are you, Dominic, and a judge who has buried 2 of her own siblings and still shows up to work every morning at 8:47 with a thermos of Earl Grey and a stack of docket sheets taller than her chair. The children will be okay because you are not asking them to perform bravery. You are asking Theo to draw a house. You are asking Mia to point at a person who hums. That is not bravery. That is childhood. You are letting childhood testify. Thank you, Rosalind. Thank me when you win. When we win. We will win. The question is what winning feels like. Winning feels like a kitchen that smells like coffee and not perfume. Winning feels like a calendar book that is not a museum exhibit. Winning feels like Theo drawing the cushions on the chairs in the small house and Mia drawing the horse whose tail is no longer on fire. Liana laughed despite herself. Rosalind was good at this. Rosalind was good at translating the courtroom into the kitchen. In the morning, Theo and Mia brushed their teeth without being told. Theo put on his school shirt. Mia put on a dress Liana had bought without negotiating. Dominic arrived at 7:30 with Marin driving. He had with him 3 things: a sealed envelope, a binder of exhibits, and a small wooden box. "What is the box?" Liana asked. "A gift from Rosalind," he said. "She asked me not to open it." Inside the box were 7 folded notes. They were letters from the children. They were the letters the children had dictated to Rosalind over the summer, asking what the small house would look like. Theo had dictated a letter about the cushions. Mia had dictated a letter about the horse. There were 5 more. Rosalind had stamped them with a small heart and a date. The letters were not evidence. They were not exhibits. They were a record of the children using their imagination to describe a life that, until that week, had been theoretical. Liana closed the box. "The judge should not see them," she said. "This is correct," Dominic said. "Why did Rosalind send them?" "Because some exhibits are for the wall only." They drove in silence. The car smelled of coffee. The morning smelled of ordinary. That was the trick. The morning had to look ordinary. Not because drama was a lie. Drama was not a lie. Drama was just expensive. And the children had already paid enough. Inside the courthouse, the hallway was crowded. A man in a charcoal suit stood near the elevator. Calloway. He was holding 2 coffees. He offered one to Dominic. Dominic took it. They nodded at each other like men who had been in a foxhole for 2 days and were tired of pretending. "Your wife," Calloway said. "She is incredible." "My client," Dominic said. "I meant your wife. I am her lawyer. Don't make me sentimental before 9 a.m. They entered the courtroom. Judge Vasquez arrived at 9:07. She had the thermos. She had the chain. She had the docket. She had the question. Liana sat at the plaintiff's table. She arranged her folder in front of her. The calendar book was in the center. The investor drafts were on the left. The receipts were on the right. The crayon horse was in her bag. She would not put it on the table. The crayon horse was for the wall. Grant sat at the defendant's table. He wore the same tie. He wore the same cufflinks. He wore the same cologne. He was handsome. He was composed. He had not yet learned that handsome and composed were the 2 adjectives a judge used when she intended to dismantle a man without raising her voice. The judge opened the session. "Mr. Holstead," she said, "before we call any other witness, I will ask you one question. The question will be recorded. The answer will be recorded. The transcript will be entered into the custody record. Please rise." Grant stood. "Mr. Holstead," Judge Vasquez said, "in your testimony yesterday, you stated that your wife's role as a hospital administrator made her unfit to be the primary residential parent during weekdays. You stated your role as a venture partner allowed you to be present at the children's school events at greater frequency." "Yes, Your Honor." "You have on your wrist, today, a pair of cufflinks. Are those the same cufflinks you wore yesterday?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Whose gift are those cufflinks?" Grant blinked. The room waited. This was not a legal question. This was an eye. "My mother," he said. "My mother, Eloise Holstead." "Mr. Holstead, you understand that you are under oath." "I do." "Mr. Holstead, the case file contains, as of 9 o'clock this morning, an ancillary submission from Ms. Sienna Quartermain. In her submission, she provides receipts for 3 pieces of jewelry given to you between July and January. She provides 2 photographs of you wearing those pieces. She provides the packaging tag from one of them. The packaging tag is dated April 14th. The April 14th date is 6 weeks after your wife's testimony began scheduling. The cufflinks you are wearing today are not on the list of pieces Ms. Quartermain is claiming." She paused. "But you have stated under oath that the cufflinks were a gift from your mother." Grant's mouth opened. In addition, the judge said, we have phone records. The records show 17 calls between you and Ms. Courtroom in the last 72 hours, 8 of them at a time your wife testified you were on a call with your children. Mr. Holstead. The voice was patient. Patient was unsparing. You testified that you are a present father. You testified that you can be relied on to answer honestly under oath. You have just lied about the origin of an item of jewelry in front of me. You lied about a small thing. The small thing matters. The small thing matters because if a man lies about where a pair of cufflinks came from on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. under oath, his testimony about where his children sleep at 11 p.m. cannot be trusted. Grant's face went pale. Not embarrassment pale. Not shame pale. A deeper pale. The pale of a man realizing that a woman had not just told the truth in front of him, but had told the truth in front of him with precision, and that precision was a sentence he could not return. Liana watched his face. She had not known that cufflinks would become evidence. Sienna had filed them. Rosalind had sent them. The night had prepared itself in rooms she could not see, the way weather prepares itself above a city and arrives on schedule. After the cufflinks, the courtroom was quiet for the time it takes a man to remember that he is no longer the smartest person in the room. Judge Vasquez took a sip of her tea. She set the cup down. She did not look at either attorney. She looked at the calendar book in Liana's folder, the way a person looks at a window when they have already decided the time of day is fair. We will proceed, she said. Dr. Helen Aoki took the stand. She was 58, compact, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of glasses that magnified the part of the eye where intention lives. She had conducted 412 custody evaluations. Her testimony was generally accepted by every family court in the state. She had not taken a Sunday off in 11 years because, she once told a reporter, the children do not take Sundays off from missing their parents. She described her methodology in plain language. She described the structured interviews with each parent. She described the home visits. She described the bond assessment. Mr. Holstead, she said, presented as charming, articulate, and organized. He described his schedule with confidence. He described his home with affection. He described his children with admiration. He did not, in any of the 4 sessions I conducted, describe a specific memory in which one of his children had comforted him. Not one. Theo missed his mother during a school play rehearsal in October. The child called his mother at 9:18 p.m. He spoke with her for 11 minutes. I asked Mr. Holstead if he remembered what his son said. He said he remembered his son was proud of his performance. I asked what the son said. Mr. Holstead could not recall a single sentence. He remembered the pride he felt. He did not remember the voice. She paused. Children are not proud in sentences. Children are proud in the way they hold their mother's hand on the walk home. Children are proud in the way they describe a parent's handwriting on a permission slip. Children are proud in the way they explain the smell of their mother's coat. Mr. Holstead could not recall. He remembered his own feeling, not his son's voice. That distinction is, for the court, the difference between a witness and a participant. She described Mia. Mia was 6. She drew the house she wants to live in. She drew the small house. She drew 2 adults and 2 children. She drew a horse outside. She drew a tree. She drew a kitchen table with chairs that have cushions. She drew her mother's name in the kitchen window in blue crayon. She did not draw her father's name anywhere. When I asked her where her father's name would go, she wrote it twice on the back of the page, in small letters, as if it needed to be careful. Liana's hands tightened in her lap. The children, Aoki said, have a primary attachment to their mother. They have a meaningful attachment to their father. Meaningful is not primary. Significant is not sustained. Presence is not the same as attendance. Co-parenting, in this household, has consisted of one parent attending and one parent recording. The court should consider residential custody with the mother, with structured visitation for the father, and a therapy schedule I will provide in writing." She paused again. Then she said the sentence that no one in the courtroom was prepared to hear. "A court should also consider awarding the mother the right to make educational and medical decisions for the children without consent from the father, because the father has, on 4 occasions, attempted to override the mother's judgment in cases where the children's doctors have confirmed the mother was correct." The courtroom exhaled. Grant's chair creaked. He did not know that Aoki had interviewed his daughter's pediatrician. He did not know that Liana had not, in fact, told the pediatrician what to write. The pediatrician had written what was true. The truth did not require coaching. Truth only required an opportunity. Aoki had provided the opportunity. Judge Vasquez took notes. She wrote 4 lines and underlined one of them twice. Underlining was a habit she had developed in 1998 when she had first handled a case where a father had persuaded a 5-year-old to lie about his mother's parenting. The 5-year-old was 24 now. He had written her a letter 2 years ago thanking her for the decision. She kept the letter in the bottom drawer of her desk. She did not show it to anyone. Some exhibits are for the wall only. Dominic called his witness. Liana took the stand. She wore a navy suit. She wore no perfume. She wore the bracelet her mother had given her at 16. She carried no props. She carried the calendar book. She carried the receipts. She carried the moments she had refused to forget. "Mrs. Holstead," Dominic said, "tell the court about the dates your husband missed because of Sienna Quartermain." Liana opened the calendar book. "There are 14, she said. "There are 14 dinners at which he was either present and distracted, present and early leaving, or absent because he had driven to Manhattan to give her a trinket, a piece of jewelry, or a ride to a gallery opening he could not explain to his partners because his partners were starting to wonder why their firm's youngest associate would be attending a gallery opening in Chelsea at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday." "Did you confront him?" "Yes. On March 3rd. "What did he say?" "He said I was being unfair. He said Sienna was a friend. He said Sienna had been going through something. He said the children were fine. He said I was overreacting. He said the word overreacting 14 times. I counted them on the calendar I am holding. I was, in fact, counting his words the way his assistant counted his meetings. Counting is not overreacting. Counting is what happens when a woman no longer trusts the man in the room to count for her." She paused. "What did you do when he said you were overreacting?" "I packed his lunch. I dropped the children at school. I drove to work. I negotiated a budget that prevented 17 layoffs in the pediatric ward. I came home. I cooked dinner. I put the children to bed. I did not pack his lunch for 2 more days, because I had decided, by then, that a man who missed his own lunches was a man who could also be a man who missed his own children." Something moved in the gallery behind them. Liana did not look back. Rosalind was in the back row, holding her phone like a rosary, eyes closed. "Mrs. Holstead," Dominic said, "is there a moment in the last 3 years that you remember most clearly?" "Yes." "Tell the court." "Theo had been ill in October with a fever that kept him home from school for 3 days. Grant traveled. He was in Boston. He texted from a hotel at 8:05 p.m. He said he was sorry. He said he was thinking of Theo. He said Theo's temperature was a sign of strength. He said Theo was going to be great. I sat beside Theo's bed holding a cool cloth. The child had a temperature of 102.4. Grant believed that being sorry from a hotel was the same as being present in a bedroom. Sorry is a word that loses its heat in transit. Present is a body in a chair. Judge Vasquez did not write. She listened. There was a difference. Cross-examination. Pratt was professional. He tried to keep Liana in the role of the working mother. "Mrs. Holstead," he said, "would it be fair to say that you have spent 2,500 hours at the hospital in the last year?" "I worked 2,388 hours as recorded by my timekeeping system." The remaining 112 hours were spent on call from home with my phone beside my bed, while my husband was at a dinner with Sienna Quartermain, while my daughter was asleep with a stuffed giraffe, and while my son was asleep with a flashlight under his pillow because he was afraid of the dark. Pratt exhaled. Mrs. Holstead, you have been quoted as saying your husband treated you like an accessory. I have not been quoted as saying that. That is a fiction in your firm's preliminary memo. I have said, on the record, that my husband treated my competence as a charming hobby. Charm is not derogatory. Hobby is. A hobby is something a person does in their leisure time. My competence is not a leisure activity. My competence is the reason the pediatric ward kept its funding. My competence is the reason the children's pediatrician returned my calls. My competence is the reason Liana Voss is on the stand and Liana Voss is awake. Yes, Pratt said. But you are still willing to deny your husband weekend custody on every third weekend. I am willing to deny my husband unsupervised weekend custody based on Aoki's evaluation. I am willing to allow supervised weekend custody in a setting his therapist and my attorney both approve. I am willing to deny him the right to take the children to a Manhattan hotel he has used twice with Ms. Quartermain. I am willing to deny him the right to make medical decisions because his last medical decision was to refuse the children's flu shot and then change his mind when the doctor pointed out he had been misreading a CDC chart he had pulled up at 11 p.m. She stopped. The courtroom was silent. Mrs. Holstead, Pratt said, is there anything you would like to say to the court? There is one thing. Please. My husband has spent 3 years saying he loves our children in sentences. I have spent 3 years loving them in attendance. If the court asks me to choose between sentences and attendance, I will choose attendance every single time. Attendance is louder than sentences. Attendance is louder than apology. Attendance is louder than engraved cufflinks. Attendance is louder than cufflinks that were not, in fact, a gift from his mother, and that were, in fact, a gift from a woman whose name he was not willing to say out loud under oath. She closed the calendar book. I have nothing further. At 9:17 the next morning, Judge Vasquez returned. She had the thermos. She had the chain. She had the docket. She had spent the night reading the filings. She had, her clerk told Dominic over coffee in the hallway, marked 17 pages with a yellow pencil. Some pages were 2 lines. Some pages were half a page. Some pages were a single word. The single word was the same on every page, verify. She did not love the calendar book. She loved the entries that the calendar book proved because the entries were corroborated by something Grant could not have remembered on his own. The court notes, she began, that the cufflinks testimony was not the centerpiece of this hearing. The centerpiece of this hearing was a calendar book documenting, over 11 months, 312 entries that the parents could not have faked independently. The calendar book is corroborated by school attendance logs, restaurant receipts, parking garage timestamps, credit card statements, therapy session notes, and pediatrician appointment records. The calendar book is not a fiction. The calendar book is a cathedral. Grant's attorneys looked at each other. The court further notes that the financial exhibits introduced by Mrs. Holstead show that she authored 142 draft documents that were then altered in the final submitted versions. The court does not at this time reach a conclusion as to fraud, but the court does note that the difference between the drafts and the finals is the difference between a conscience that was accurate and a conscience that was edited. A conscience can be edited in a courtroom as well as in a boardroom. The court will allow the financial exhibits to remain in the record for the custody finding because the custody finding turns on a question that is simpler than fraud. She paused. The custody finding turns on a question of presence. Presence is not attendance. Presence is not performance. Presence is not a series of statements made in a deposition or a hearing or a hotel at 8:05 p.m. Presence is the daily, durable, boring act of being in the room. Presence is oatmeal. Presence is permission slips. Presence is a 2 a.m. fever. Presence is the desk the children know they can find you at, even when the desk is at the hospital, even when the hospital is 2 towns away. Because the children know that at 2 a.m., the woman at the desk is thinking about their temperature before she is thinking about the budget. She looked at Grant. Mr. Holstead, you are not present in the way the court requires. You are present in the way a CEO is present. You attend when it is convenient. You sign when the signature is legible. You attend when the scheduling conflict resolves itself in your favor. The court cannot, in conscience, award residential custody of children between the ages of 6 and 9 to a parent who is present by attendance, but not present by attendance at 2 a.m. She looked at Liana. Mrs. Holstead, you are present. You are present in the way a custodian is present. You are present when the custodian is needed and when the custodian is not needed. You are present by routine, not by applause. The court is awarding you residential custody of the children, primary decision-making authority on medical and educational matters, supervised visitation for the father, structured reunification therapy for the children, and a maintenance order calculated on the basis of your husband's average annual earnings for the last 3 years as adjusted by the financial exhibits introduced by both parties. She paused. The court notes, for the record, that Mrs. Holstead has agreed to allow Mr. Holstead to attend the children's performances. The court notes that Mr. Holstead has, in 3 years, attended 11 of Theo's 22 soccer practices, 3 of his 9 school assemblies, 7 of his 24 homework check-ins, both of Mia's spring recitals, 1 of Mia's 4 doctor's appointments, and 0 of Mia's 2 emergency room visits. She turned the page. She read the next entry. She closed the file. The court also notes, for the record, that a custody evaluation by Dr. Helen Aoki has recommended the parenting schedule this court is now ordering. The court adopts Dr. Aoki's recommendation in full, including the structured visitation schedule and the reunification therapy schedule. She looked at Grant. He stood. He did not know what to do with his hands. He had been a man whose hands had always held something. A pen. A glass. A cufflink. A wife's waist in a photograph. Now his hands held nothing. Mr. Holstead, she said, I have one question. It is not in the custody order. It is not in the financial order. It is not in the therapy schedule. It is a question I will ask because I have been on this bench for 17 years and I have learned that the most important question in any custody hearing is not the legal question. The most important question is the human question. The courtroom stilled. The gallery exhaled. Rosalind opened her eyes. Your daughter Mia drew a house in Dr. Aoki's evaluation, Judge Vasquez said. She drew the small house. She drew the kitchen table. She drew the horse. She drew your name twice on the back of the page, in small letters, as if it needed to be careful. She drew her mother's name in the kitchen window in blue crayon, large, as if it needed to be seen. Mr. Holstead, my question is this. She leaned forward. Her voice was patient. Patient was unsparing. Patient was the kindness that did not protect a man from himself. If your daughter's back of the page handwriting is how she remembers you, and if your daughter's front of the page crayon is how she remembers her mother, what are you going to do about it? Grant's face went pale. It was not embarrassment. It was not shame. It was the deep, clinical pale of a man realizing that the woman who had loved him in attendance had not, in any meaningful way, left him. She had simply written his name on the back of the page and walked away. He had been moved to the back of the page. He opened his mouth. Nothing came. Then, in a voice so quiet it barely carried to the gallery, he said, I will take Tuesday mornings off. The courtroom waited. Judge Vasquez nodded once. Tuesday mornings, she said. Soccer practice is on Saturdays. Recitals are on Thursdays. Doctor's appointments are on Fridays. Tuesday mornings is the slot no one fought over because there was nothing on the schedule on Tuesday mornings except the suggestion that someday, a parent might want one. Tuesday mornings is convenient. Tuesday mornings is not enough. Grant said nothing. The judge stood. The room stood. The gavel fell. The sound was small and clean, the sound of a woman whose question had answered itself. The hallway outside the courtroom had the kind of silence that follows a verdict the way a tide follows a moon. People did not speak. People did not congratulate. People looked at their shoes. They looked at the carpet. They looked at the elevators and the stairs as if those were the legitimate destinations of the morning. Rosalind Carrington rose from the bench near the gallery doors. She did not approach Liana. She had the instinct of a woman who understood that the moment after a verdict belongs to the person who earned it. Liana stayed seated for 3 minutes. The calendar book sat in front of her. The receipts sat in their binder. The crayon horse sat in her bag. The judge had retired to chambers. The clerk had filed the orders. The courtroom had emptied. Liana sat where she had sat for most of 2 days, and she did something she had not done in 11 years. She cried. She cried quietly. She cried with the same restraint she had used in the kitchen in Hartford and on the porch in Old Lyme. She cried the way a person cries when the children are not in the room, when the audience is her own breath, when the only witness is the calendar that carried her through the months in which she could not speak. Dominic stood by the door. He did not rush her. He had learned, in 26 years of law, that the moment after a verdict is not the moment to rush. The moment after a verdict is the moment in which a person discovers what their body has been holding. The body had been holding the calendar. The body had been holding the receipts. The body had been holding the 800 times the children had said goodnight from the kitchen counter and not from the doorway because the man who should have been in the doorway was at a dinner with a publicist whose perfume had not yet fully aired out of the cedar-lined closet. When she stood, she did not wipe her eyes theatrically. She wiped them the way a person wipes their eyes when they are not in the mood to be observed. She wiped them because the air was cold and her tears were warm and the difference was unhelpful. "Let me see the children," she said. "The children are in conference room 4A with Marin," Dominic said. "I have not let them in yet because they have been watching a movie on my sister's phone and I did not want them to hear the cufflinks testimony." "Thank you." "You do not need to thank me. I want to thank you. You did the work. You kept the work in evidence." He almost smiled. Almost was enough. In the conference room, Marin was sitting with Theo and Mia. Theo was reading his book. Mia was playing with the wooden horse Rosalind had bought her on the way in. She had packed it in her suitcase. The suitcase was small. The suitcase was enough. The horse was inside. Theo looked up. "Did the judge say yes?" She said yes. "Does that mean we live in the small house?" "It means we live in the small house." "Is the horse coming?" "The horse is coming." "Is Dad coming on Tuesday mornings?" "He said he might." Might is not yes. Might is the word a person uses when he has not yet learned how to say nothing. Theo nodded. He was 9. He had the look of a child who had begun to understand that adults sometimes said things they had not earned the right to say, and that children had to learn, very young, how to distinguish between a parent's sentence and a parent's attendance. He had begun the lesson. He had not yet finished it. He would not finish it for many years. But he had begun. Mia held up the horse. "His tail is not on fire anymore." "No." "Did I fix him?" "You fixed him." "How?" "You put him in the suitcase and you carried him somewhere safe." "Did the suitcase make him safe?" "The suitcase made him safe because someone carried it who did not let go." Mia nodded. "The horse is hungry. Then we will feed him something." "Can horses eat pancakes?" "The horse can eat whatever the person carrying him decides the horse can eat." Mia carried the horse out into the hallway. She walked toward the elevator. Liana watched her walk. She had a small stride. She had a firm hand on the wooden figure. She had the posture of a 6-year-old who had, in the last 4 weeks, learned how to keep something important from breaking. Liana made a phone call. She called Rosalind. "We won," she said. "I know," Rosalind said. "I was there." Did you hear the cufflinks testimony? I heard it from the back row. I cried. I cried like a person who has been waiting for an attorney to ask that question for 28 years. The judge asked it. The judge asked it because the cufflinks were the smallest lie he could tell. Small lies are how you discover large ones. What do I do now? You do nothing. You go home. You put the horse on the shelf. You feed Mia pancakes. You let Theo read his book. You let the man know that Tuesday mornings is a starting point, not a sentence. What about Sienna? Sienna is a woman who has been building a life out of someone else's house. The house will be sold. The life will need a different address. She will find it. She always does. Is that fair? It is exactly fair. Fair is not the absence of pain. Fair is the redistribution of consequence. Sienna's consequence is that she has been seen. The man she was with has been moved to the back of the page. Your consequence is that you are the person on the front of the page, in blue crayon, large enough to be seen from the kitchen window. That is the consequence you earned. Liana said, "Thank you." Rosalind said, "Thank me at the kitchen counter. Thank me over pancakes. Thank me in the small house." Liana hung up. She walked out of the courthouse with Theo on her left and Mia on her right. Mia was carrying the horse. Theo was carrying his book. They walked toward the parking garage. The car smelled of coffee. The morning smelled of ordinary. The courthouse clock read 10:47. The clock had not changed since the morning they had arrived, but the people underneath it had rearranged themselves in a way that did not yet have a name. In the parking garage, a man in a charcoal suit stood near the elevator bank. Calloway. He was holding a coffee. He was alone. He watched them walk by. "Your wife," he said, as he had 2 days before. "My client," Dominic said, as he had 2 days before. "This time I meant both," Calloway said. "Then you meant something correct," Dominic said. He opened Liana's door. Liana sat in front. The children sat in back. The horse sat on the center console. The book sat in Theo's lap. The calendar book sat in Liana's bag. She did not open it. She had earned the right to put the calendar book on the shelf. The small house was a colonial 4 blocks from Theo's school and 11 minutes from Mia's pediatrician. It had a kitchen with a window seat, a backyard with a tree, and a fence low enough that a 6-year-old could see a horse she had not yet acquired. Liana had bought it 4 weeks before the custody hearing, when the settlement talks had broken down and Dominic had said, "Buy the house. Buy it now. Buy it before he thinks to buy it. Buy it with the inheritance your mother left you, because that money was never his, and his lawyers will not try to take it from a woman who has earned it." She had bought it. She had signed the closing documents on a Friday afternoon and had held the keys in her hand the way a person holds an instrument they have not yet learned to play. They moved in on the 3rd Saturday in March. The movers arrived at 8 a.m. There were 3 of them. They had been retained by the firm Dominic's sister used for medical families. They unpacked the boxes with the efficiency of men who had seen many small moves and understood that a child's bedroom is a sacred site. Theo chose his room first. He chose the smaller one because, he said, the larger one had a window that faced east, and the east window had the sun waking the child up too early, and he had decided, over the last 4 months, that he preferred to wake up on his own schedule rather than the sun's. Mia chose the room with the window seat because she said the window seat was shaped like a saddle. Mia was 6. Mia had a vocabulary Liana had not anticipated. Liana put the horse on the shelf beside the window. She put the crayon horse from the refrigerator on the kitchen table. She put the calendar book on the highest shelf in her office, beside the dictionary and the photo of her mother at 16, the photo in which she was laughing at a joke Liana had never been told. At 5:30 that evening, the kitchen window let in the kind of amber light that families photograph for no one in particular. Marin had come over to help arrange the pantry. Rosalind had flown in from Chicago for the weekend and had brought strawberries. Dominic had arrived with a bottle of sparkling cider and a card from the clinic where Liana had saved the pediatric ward 2 years earlier. The card read, "Thank you for the budget. We are still here." The children ate at the kitchen table. The chairs had cushions. Mia drew a new picture. The picture was the small house, in blue crayon, on a piece of construction paper she had chosen herself. Inside the house, she drew the horse. Inside the horse, she drew a small heart. She wrote her mother's name on the window in large letters. She wrote her own name on the door. She did not write her father's name. She wrote it once on the back, in small letters, "Careful." Theo looked at the picture. He took his crayon. On the back, beside the small dad, he wrote in even smaller letters, "Tuesday." Liana saw it. She did not move the crayon. She did not erase the letters. She did not tell Theo that Tuesday was not enough. Tuesday was what his father had promised. Tuesday was what a man says when he has just learned that his daughter's crayon is the loudest evidence in the building. Tuesday was enough for one evening. Tuesday was a sentence. Tuesday was not attendance. But sentence was where attendance sometimes began. Marin raised a glass. "To the small house," she said. "To the small house," Rosalind said. "To the small house," Dominic said. "To the small house," Liana said, and her voice did not shake. They drank the sparkling cider. The children made a toast with apple juice. The horse watched from the shelf. The calendar book remained on the highest shelf, untouched. The candle Marin had brought was lavender. The candle smelled like the laundry room, which smelled like the kitchen in the previous house, which smelled like the warm hours Liana had spent alone with her children when the man she had married was not present by attendance but was present at the dinner where Sienna Quartermain's perfume had been worn once too many times. Lavender is a forgiving scent. Liana had decided to forgive the scent first because forgiveness begins in kitchens, not courtrooms. After dinner, Rosalind pulled Liana onto the porch. The night air was cold. The neighbor's dog had stopped barking. The street was empty in the way suburban streets are empty on the first warm evening of March, when the snow has melted but the lawns have not yet been mowed and the porches still look like they belong to people who have just moved in. "I want to ask you something," Rosalind said. "Ask." "Are you happy?" "I am not yet happy. Happy is a luxury. I am present. I am here. The children are eating pancakes in a kitchen that does not smell like another woman's perfume. I am reading a book in the same room where my son is reading his book. I am humming in the shower in the morning, which Mia insists is loud enough to wake the sun. I am, for the first time in 11 years, a person whose house is not a museum of someone else's decisions. That is not an answer to the question. It is the only answer I have. Happy will come. It will come in the mornings when the children run into the kitchen without negotiating. It will come in the evenings when Theo finishes a chapter and tells me about it as if I were his editor, not his mother, and I pretend to be more interested in the chapter than I am in his voice. It will come in the way Mia draws the horse and puts the heart inside it. It will come in the way my calendar book stays on the shelf because it has nothing to prove. Will you see him? On Tuesdays. He will come on Tuesdays. The court has ordered it. Will you let him in? I will let him into the kitchen. I will not let him into the bedroom. I will not let him into the part of me that he earned once and then forgot to keep. He will have pancakes. He will have the kitchen table. He will have the back of the page. He will not have the front. And Sienna? Sienna will find a different window. Sienna will find a different pair of cufflinks. Sienna will learn that a woman who has had her kitchen demolished by someone else's perfume will not, the second time around, mistake gratitude for attendance. Sienna will be fine. Sienna is always fine. That is the difference between Sienna and me. Sienna is fine. I am present. Rosalind laughed. You are too smart for your own kitchen. I am too smart for my kitchen by design. I built it. I bought the appliances. I picked the cabinetry. I measured the window seat. Know your kitchen. That is the first rule of motherhood and the second rule of marriage. And the third rule? The third rule is that a woman's silence is not always heartbreak. Sometimes it is strategy. Sometimes it is self-respect. Sometimes it is the sound of a door closing so softly that the man on the other side does not realize he has lost the whole house until the lights go out. Rosalind nodded. She had heard this sentence before. She had written it in her journal in graduate school, in the margin of a textbook that was older than both of them. Some sentences are not invented. They are remembered. They are passed from woman to woman like recipes. Like prayers. Like the small, persistent rituals of kitchens where mothers refuse to decay. They went inside. The children were sleeping. Theo had left his book open on the counter. Mia had left the horse standing on the kitchen table, where Liana had placed it earlier. The horse was looking out the kitchen window into the backyard, where the tree was not yet in leaf but was already promising leaves. The horse was looking out the window as if it had seen something it had not yet described. Liana stood in the kitchen. She stood in the kitchen the way a person stands in a room they have built, the way a person stands in a room whose measurements include the distance between the stove and the sink she chose and the window seat she measured and the place where the calendar book lives now, on the highest shelf, behind glass, beside the photo of her mother at 16, painted in blue crayon by a daughter who understood that love did not need to be loud. Tomorrow, Grant would come. He would arrive at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. He would bring flowers. He would bring apologies. He would bring cufflinks. He would not bring attendance. He would bring the small Tuesday that Theo had written on the back of the page, in even smaller letters, careful. He would bring the back of the page he had earned by his absence, and he would bring it as if the back of the page were the same as the front. It was not. It would never be. But it was the page he had. Liana was done with the page. Liana was done with the man she had once loved in sentences. Liana was not done with the children. Liana was not done with the kitchen. Liana was not done with the calendar that was now a museum instead of an indictment. Liana was not done with the room that smelled like lavender and pancakes and apple juice and the small, persistent hum of a woman in the shower, which Mia insisted was loud enough to wake the sun. On Tuesday, when Grant arrived, Liana would open the door. She would let him see the kitchen. She would not let him sit at the table. She would let him see the horse on the shelf. She would let him see the calendar on the highest shelf. She would let him see the crayon in blue on the kitchen window. She would let him see Theo reading the book in the corner, the way a person reads a book in a house where someone is present. She would let him see Mia drawing a horse whose tail was no longer on fire. She would not let him see the back of the page. The back of the page was for her. The back of the page was for the children. The back of the page was for Rosalind. The back of the page was the part of the page where his name was written in small letters, careful, as if it needed to be careful, as if it needed to be careful because he had not yet earned the right to be large. She would close the door at 11 a.m. He would leave. He would drive back to the townhouse he had kept. He would sit at the kitchen counter where the sentence he had ignored had been written on a rehearsal card. He would notice, for the first time, that the rehearsal card had not moved. He would notice, for the first time, that the rehearsal card was not a sentence. The rehearsal card was the sound of a door closing so softly that the man on the other side had not realized he had lost the whole house until the lights had gone out. The lights, on Tuesday, would not go out on Liana's kitchen. The lights would stay on. The lights would stay on the way a mother's lights stay on at 2 a.m., when the child has a fever that is not yet a sentence, when the husband is at a dinner in Manhattan with a woman whose perfume has not yet aired out of the pantry, when the only witness in the room is the calendar book on the highest shelf, the photo of her mother at 16, the crayon horse on the kitchen window, and the small blue crayon in the back of a 6-year-old's hand, drawing a heart inside a horse that was no longer on fire, in a kitchen that smelled like pancakes, in a small house, in a quiet town, where a woman had finally learned that she was not a sentence. She was a presence. She had earned